Hi everyone, this is Sharon. Today I have a couple of extra special journals to share with you. I've been itching to make a baby journal for quite some time, and the perfect opportunity presented itself to me, and I actually made two of them. I was talking to my nephew Travis, who he and his wife Katie are expecting twin girls in August, and he was asking me about my journals and mentioned that Katie wanted to do a little bit of journaling before and after the birth of the girls. And so I immediately said I would love to make her a couple of journals. And so I did. And did I mention they have a 1-year-old girl also? Yes, they do. And so I figured the sooner I get these done, the better, so she can do a little bit of journaling beforehand, because I think after the birth, she's not going to have a whole lot of time for that. So anyway, it was nice to know that they were going to be girls, so I could wrap them up with something really sweet and pretty and lacy. So what I did was I made a couple of lacy wraps for each one. I'll kind of show you the covers for both and then flip through each one separately. So this one has this kind of neutral colored tie to it, and I just tucked in on each one a little quilted heart. I used an old quilt and cut those out. I also added some hand stitching around the outside, and then this one has this pretty doily with the lacy edge on it, and I just pulled that off. I am calling these two girls Sugar and Spice for now. She can take these labels and flip them around and actually write their names on at some point in the future. But I thought Sugar and Spice was perfect because, there's always that one spicy girl who comes up with all the great ideas. And then there's the sweet sister who carries them all out. So I'm thinking that's what's going to happen. So Travis mentioned that Katie does love a beach theme. I asked him what kind of a theme he might want. And so I did generally do a lot of beach images and sea images. They're very vintagey, kind of soft colors in them. And then I also added a lot of other pretty images like florals and things as well. For the two covers, I used two Reader's Digest covers. I added these nameplates on the front. I like the seahorses on this one. And then I created some spines, and I covered them with floral fabrics. And these journals, I imagine that she will be doing a little bit of writing and using them as keepsakes and memorabilia holders. So this is set up with a spine that can expand probably double of what it is now, and she can stuff a lot of things in there and it still won't be a gator mouth. So kind of had to keep that in mind as I put it together. So this is the cover on that one, and then I'll bring this one out. This kind of has more of a purpley mauvey gray kind of ribbon to go with the cover. So I've got this little heart on this one. And then this has another beautiful cut lace piece for the wrap. And then this is the cover for this one. This one is Sugar. And I added a little bit of lace on this piece. And then that's the fabric spine in the back. So I will go through this one first, and then we'll take a look at the other one as well. They're both very similar, but just have slightly different images and things in them. So heading on to the inside, this one I would say has a lot of blues and greens in it, while the other one has more pinks and purples. I lined the inside with the same fabric as the outside spine. And then I used a mixture of digitals, and I was able to drag out a lot of my old vintage children's books and use those pages in here for cards and tags and some of the pages as well. So on this first page, I just have this beautiful soft image. It's got a little girl on there, and I added this bee wax seal with a little bit of regret trim on there. And then on this page, I just clipped in this sea-themed tag with the ship on there, and I used a flashcard for the base and then a little bit of ribbon on there. And I think these journals are perfect for a new mother to do some writing in, or a father, because they're not intimidating with all white pages where you think, oh, I have to write a novel. There's nice, tidy little spots to write some thoughts, an outing, maybe a milestone for the child, and it's just a lot of nice, pretty inspiration in between. I did leave quite a few blank and line pages in here as well for writing. Did a lot of punching on the pages. Here I've got this fabric pocket with lace. I also included a fair bit of lace since I knew they were girls. And then here's a tag. So this is from one of my old books. And then on the back, I added some writing sheets. And in a lot of cases, if there were images on both sides, I kind of left it so you could take a peek underneath as well. This happens to be from a book from 1912. Here I've got some sea plants included. On this page, I've got these lace belly bands, and then the seashells there, and then I've got this tag. And then on this side, I included this kind of vintagey map with the islands and the water. And then here I've got this little piece. It's from a children's book. And I just folded that page over and created a little side tuck in there. It's in another language. I don't know what it is. And then I've got this writing sheet in there. Here I've got some more sea plants, really pretty ones there. Some ledger to use for writing. And then here I've had this beautiful old bonnet for quite a long time, and I cut it in half and put half in here and half in the other journal. It's really not usable. It's really quite fragile, and these ribbon ties, if you handle them at all, they kind of fall apart, but I just thought it was a really sweet kind of tuck. And then in there I've got this image from a children's book, some writing room on the back. Here I just added some embossed paper and a tab at the top. Here I've got another page from a children's book. And again, I created a little pocket and just a little journaling card that I stuck in there. I love the pretty colors in this. And then on my clip, I just added a little bit of rickrack. This is a page from another children's book. I added lots of naturey things in there too to kind of go with the beach and nature in general. And then here on this page, I've got this beautiful yellow page from Raindrop Lila, and I just added these beautiful silk or satin ribbon for my tucks. And then here's another beautiful old book page. It says Windy, the wind. And then inside, I kind of made it as a little writing booklet, so I've just added some sweet little pink paper to the inside. You'll see these journals are not as embellished as my normal journals. I really tried to keep them as simple as possible, but still adding little journaling places for her. And then here I just trimmed the edge of that side tuck with some pretty paper, and then added some pink lace to my ties. And then on the page I just added a little bit of stenciling at the top. And then here's another beautiful old book page and this postcard of the sea. I didn't feel too bad using these book pages, because if you would see these books that I have, I think a lot of them I got at estate sales, and the covers are ripped off and the pages are written all over, and they're really in a pretty fragile state, but they're fun to use for ephemera pieces. So here I've got this piece. I added this kind of flap at the top, so that comes up and over. And then a lot of these book pages, I wanted to preserve both sides, so I used them in different ways. So here I just have this little clasp that opens up, and then this whole page comes open. I punched the sides of it, And then inside, I just tuck some writing paper and this little offcut from the book page. You can see, you can also read that side of the page. I just thought it might be fun for her to read some of the little children's stories on these pages. Here in this pocket, I've got another pretty book page. This actually was a music book. And then I created this little tag to go in there with the birds on it because it says, "What does the birdie say?" And then this is some Beside the Sea music image. And then I love these jellyfish or sea creature images. Here in this pocket, I've tucked this page, the old Sally, Dick, and Jane books. I had those when I was in grade school. And I really just took, it's like a signature from the book. So I folded this page over, and then I folded this one over so she peeks through, but they create some nice little side tucks in there. So I've got this little journaling card that I put in here. And then here you can still read the story on both sides. And then in here I have this little journaling card as well. And this beautiful naturey image, I just added this little silk bow and some fabric and a tie on there. Here I created these beautiful pockets from this, it was like a dotted Swiss cotton, real thin gauzy cotton. I don't know what it was. It wasn't a bonnet because it was long and narrow and straight. I don't know if it was some type of a collar. It had ties on the ends. So I just kind of wrapped those ties back and pleated them a little bit and did some hand stitching to kind of tack those down. But you can see the lace along the edges, and I created 2 pockets with that piece. And then in those pockets, I just added some of this old onion skin paper that didn't have a whole lot of writing on it. So if she wanted to write on these, she could. And then it's got the nice seashell in the background. And then this side as well has a pretty swan image. Here I just added in this pretty vintage beach scene and then just add a little bit of embellishment on the pages. Here on this page, this book page from a children's book was quite large and I couldn't get the text on it. So I cut that part off and just used it as my tab because it talks about Sylvester the mouse, who's on this page. And then here I just created this little kind of a dangle with these children's blocks on there. And then on the back, I just added some writing paper. Here I took some decorative paper and punched it out, kind of made a tab that goes up and over around the other side. I did that on both of these pages. So here she can tuck something in there if she likes. And then on this side of the page, there's another tuck. I added some ribbon and a full button. And then in these, I took this book page and cut it in half for each side. So we've got a couple of bookmarks here. And then I just took some of the text from the page and glued it onto the pieces. And then some writing room on the back. And then on my strings, I just added these little dotted hearts. And you'll notice on a lot of these pages where I have things, you can also use the back sides for writing. Here on this one, I've got this book page that I made into a tag with a little pocket. And I've used some of my watercolor swatches throughout the journals too, just because they had the nice pastel colors. And then in there, I tucked a couple of journaling cards. Here, another flip out. And then in there, I've got this piece this pretty book page, and I just added a little bit of lace to this. And then that slides out. I've got a dictionary page with some images that I waxed, and then the base can be used for journaling. And then I just added this pretty sticker on the back. Here on this page, I just added a little bit of bling with these sequins pieces. Here I added a pink ruffle to the side of the page. And then here on this top tuck, I've got this little piece, so I used a book page again and just tied in a bunch of pages to write on. Just tied those together. Love the soft florals in here. On this page, I created some corner tucks with these embroidered pieces. And then in those pockets, I've again got these sea creatures or shells. I'm not sure what's all on there, but I clipped onto that this beautiful little image of the girl. And then just added some embossed paper to the back side. And then there's room to journal on the back. I've got the piano paper there. And then something similar here. I just added a little frame that can be used somewhere in the journal. Here I just added this pretty rickrack trim to the page. And then on this side in this pocket, again, I added a little watercolor swatch to the top. And then I've got this Beatrix Potter image that I used on my tag. And then this book page, I just folded over, added some pretty ribbon to the sides, and then in there I tucked this tag. Here on my clip, I just added a couple of pretty sparkly little beads. And then on this side of the page, I've got another journaling card. I just add this little offcut of lace on the top. Talks about Grandfather Frog. And then on this side, I've just got this little tab on this paper, so that opens up for some journaling room. And that is our back cover. So that is that one. And then I'll quickly pop through the other one. It's very similar. The ephemera pieces and pages, like I said, are a little bit different. So here we have this pretty image and another bee wax seal. The other side of that bonnet. And then here I've got this at the seaside. And again, I made another one of those little booklets. And then I've got the seaside image underneath. Here I used some vintage cotton fabric for my pocket, and then I created this little piece, some writing room on the back side. Here I've got some beautiful lace going across for my belly bands. And then in there I've got these two journaling cards, again, the sea theme. Here in this pocket, I've got this cute image from a book. And just add a little bit of lace to the top of that. And then on the back, I kind of brought that around, stitched it down, punched the edge, and then sandwiched in some writing room there. Here, I just used the holes that were there to tie in this little ribbon. And then on this side in the pocket, I've got this tag, added some pretty trim to the top, and then again some writing room on the back. Here I've got two side flaps or tucks that I've kept in there, and then I use these book pages to create a little bit of kind of a folder for these onion skin pieces in this one. And then somewhere on this side, the 3 big cookies. I love these old images. Here again, I created these tucks with the beautiful ribbon. And then in there, I've got this book page of Dad reading a story. And then I just tucked in, inside there, I've got, well, if I can get it out, a book page from a Beatrix Potter book. And then some writing room on the back of that as well. And then here, I've got this journaling card with this fish page. And then I just backed it with some pretty fabric. And the family has a cat and a dog, so I had to include this in one of the journals. Added some writing room on the back of that. Here again, I've got this journaling card. I love these images from the Sylvester book. And then just added some writing paper in the back. So I stitched that down with some lace, and that also provides like a little tuck spot for something. Here I use this dotted vellum to kind of just add a cover to this page. I love this seaside scene of the little girl and her dolls. And then I just did a little bit of some stenciling on the top with paste, and then added a little bow on there. Here I've got this beautiful lacy piece. I think it was from a collar or something like that. And I just tucked in this tea-stained paper. There are some really light colored flowers on there. I don't know if you can see them or not. And then here I just added some prettiness to the pockets. And then I've got this book page that I folded up and added, well, basically created a pocket at the bottom, and then just added this vintage receipt that can be used for writing. And then on the strings, I didn't show in the other journal, but I've got a couple of pretty little beads on the bottom. Then here's the other part of that lacy collar and some more writing paper in there. These beautiful seashell images, I just love those. Here again, another fabric pocket. And then in there, I've got this tag, and I used some of that matching fabric for my tab. I just love the colors in this Grandfather Frog book. And then on the back, I just added this cute little ribbon on my little clip there, and I just clipped this paper together. It kind of folds back and forth. Another little notebook that I created, tied together. Here in the center, I've got my strings with some lace on them, and then lace across the top here. And then I've got some more of those blocks that I just kind of clipped on to the lace. And then on this page, another beautiful seascape, and then this music sheet from a children's book that I just kind of used as a folder for this card. This is just an old envelope that I used for my base. This pocket, I've got this book page, and then in there I tuck this inventory tag that can be used for journaling. And then I've got another one of those seascape postcards. Side tuck with some beautiful trim on there, and then another Benjamin Bunny journaling card. And I love this image from one of the children's books. And then in this pocket, I just added some pretty ribbon to this page. And then in there, it opens up, and I just created a pocket with this image and added some writing paper and this little piece in there. Here on this page, again, I've got the little hearts with the dots on. And then I've clipped to this page, I've got this pretty little crystal bead at the top. Another pretty embossed frame. This fairy girl. And I just clipped it to this beautiful pattern paper and added some writing room on the back. Here on this page, I took one of the larger book pages and created an envelope. So I tied that up and just kind of put some washi tape down the seam in the middle. I think I'll just leave that shut, and then I've tucked in some writing pieces on the inside of that, but I just thought that was a fun little envelope. Here again on the shells, I just added a little bit of sequins for some bling. And then here, this is a sweet little tuck. And then I've got these girls painting, so I thought I'd add another couple of my swatches there. Pretty book page. And this is the last page of that one. So I hope you enjoyed the flip through of these two journals. I love making baby journals, and I don't do it very often, so this was really a lot of fun for me. Thanks so much for joining me today, and until next time, bye-bye.